Hey guys, welcome back to the Walking Arrow podcast, where we help men live intentional lives and become the providers, protectors, and leaders that we are called to be. In today's episode, we're going to talk through a trait that is often misunderstood and, as a result, not embraced by men. My hope is by the end of this episode, we will have flipped that on its head and look at this particular trait through the right lens and give us perspective in something that we should really embrace as men. To start, I want to share a story from this past week. My boys, my two oldest, a sophomore and a sixth grader, have been doing summer conditioning, weights and conditioning all summer long. We do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This past week, we had a shortened time. My sixth grader had football camp Monday through Thursday. As a result, they did not have the normal conditioning on Friday. Also, my high schooler, my sophomore, his conditioning ended early on Friday. So I thought, hey, what a great time for us to go get some donuts just at the local donut shop just down the street from their school. We go in there, and immediately I pick up on this vibe that's like, all right, something's a little bit tense. Didn't think too much of it, but we go around the I don't even really know what you call it. There's a line. You kind of make this big loop to go in front of the donut case, and we get up there. And we've been there several times. I asked my boys, which donuts would you like? Surprisingly, they agreed on the same ones. They wanted these chocolate glazed donuts. They had the appearance that they were filled. The boys would have loved to have a filled donut. So asked the lady behind the counter, I was like, hey, are these filled? And instead of just saying, no, they're not, but we have some more over here that are, she responded with, those are donuts. I had a little bit of a pause. I'm like, okay, I don't really know what that means. And I asked her, do you have any others that are filled? She's like, only this one over here. Like we're down to one. It's sort of this confrontational response. So I told the boys, I said, hey, must have been a different place. We've had some just like this that were filled. And I think that was the wrong thing to say. Clearly it was with this lady, because then she started to tell me that there's no way I could have had a donut that was filled. It's impossible. And that I had to be thinking of the Bismarck donut. And at that point, my thought was, shame on me. You know what? I completely forgot about the Bismarck pastry. It's slipped my mind. In reality, I had no clue that was even a thing. And to be quite honest, I haven't looked it up to see if she's telling me the truth. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt there. But needless to say, a little more confrontational than it needed to be over donuts. But there were three people behind the counter, this lady, another lady, and another guy. And I think he must have picked up on something, because he is the one that actually came over. He's like, okay, what can I help you with? And I said, I'd like 7 of these donuts here. He's like, you want one? I'm like, no, I actually do want 7, believe it or not. So he starts throwing them into the box. And I mean that literally. He's throwing them in there. And as he's doing that, the two ladies look at each other. And the one that helped us did this like half laugh. But it's really just, I'm sure you've seen it, it's really just a laugh to be like, can you believe this guy? And I see them looking at each other, and she just has this look of disgust on her face. Like, how could this guy reach middle age and not know that you can't fill a donut? So apparently I did. I made it to middle age and didn't know that. But a couple things you can learn from that. One, I took the high road, and I recognize we are talking about donuts here. So that's not lost on me. But for those that know me, you have probably noticed I absolutely hate being corrected. I hate being wrong. And just as much, I really hate if I feel like somebody's talking down to me. And this was very much a scenario where I felt like somebody's talking down to me. Granted, it was over a donut, but still super confrontational for the scenario, right? The situation did not warrant the type of response that we got when asking for a donut. So I'm proud to say that I took the high road on this. And instead of saying, you know what, lady, I have my friend ChatGPT. Why don't we solve this right now? I'm going to look up, can you fill a donut or not. I didn't do that. I just paid the $11 and change to get our donuts, and we walked out of the store with a good laugh amongst me and my boys. I will say on the way home, one of the first things we searched for was can you fill a donut? And I'd love to say that I was actually right. So that makes me taking the high road even better, because I wanted to get back on the phone and be like, hey, local donut shop, I have this product idea for you. You should take a normal ringed donut. That's actually what they call them. I found that out. But you can take this ringed donut, and if you guys can figure out how to fill those, I think you're going to be onto something. But I didn't. Continued the high road all the way home. I was proud of myself. But all kidding aside, that was a good reminder for me that my normal tendency to want to be right and to sort of get the last word when I feel like somebody's talking down to me, I really could have ruined the moment and made getting donuts such a bigger deal than it was, right? And it could have had this whole negative feeling to it, but we didn't do that. And so I consider that a win, but it also ties into our episode a little bit today about the trait we're going to talk through. So I learned two things from that trip. One, better to take the high road. I have no regrets with how we handled that donut situation. And two, maybe there's a third here too, because second would be that those donuts were really good. They weren't filled, but they were really good. The whole way home, I was like, man, I hope these things are filled after all, just because. I think that would have made them taste even better because they were filled, but also just a little bit of, I told you. But unfortunately, they were not filled, but they were delicious. And then the third thing, and maybe the least important out of all this, but I want you all to know that you can, in fact, fill a ring donut. You just inject them from the side instead of the top. So there you go. With that, let's get into the episode. At the beginning of the episode, I sort of teased the topic with, hey, there's this trait that is often misunderstood and not embraced by men. And I want to talk through that more. And you're probably wondering, well, what is the trait? I'm so glad that you asked. The trait is meekness. Let me ask you, what do you think of when you hear the word meek? What comes to mind? Is it passivity? Is it somebody that is timid or soft? Is it somebody that's a pushover, doesn't hold their ground on anything? I would bet that most people have that view in their mind when they hear the word meek. But meek does not mean weak. Okay, culturally, we have sort of associated meekness with weakness, but we've really misunderstood one of the greatest strengths that men can have, which is to be meek. In the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, Jesus gives us the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes, these are the blessings section of the Sermon on the Mount, right? This is where we see blessed are, blessed are, blessed are, and he gives all these traits. And he's like, blessed are these people of these traits. And one of them is meek. So he says, blessed are those who are meek, for they shall inherit the earth. He gives this picture in Sermon on the Mount. He gives additional beatitude blessings in Luke. We don't get this particular one in Luke, but by the way, Sermon on the Mount in Matthew, Sermon on the Plain in Luke. I am in the camp that those are two different sermons. There's some arguments to be made that, well, hey, they're so similar. Jesus talks about a lot of the same things. They've got to be one sermon. I think there's just as much and actually stronger arguments to be made that these are, in fact, two distinct sermons. Yes, there's some similarities in the words that he uses, but the teaching is a little bit different. The audience is slightly different. Geographically, there are differences. If you look who was present, the writers of the Gospels had called out different people, and the timing was slightly different. So I am definitely in the camp that it's two distinct sermons. I honestly I don't think that really matters too much, but I think there's enough evidence there to say that it is in fact two distinct sermons, and it would not be uncommon for a teacher to reuse content from conversation to conversation, right? Truth is truth, no matter how many times that truth is conveyed. And I think the realistic answer is he probably gave parts of the sermon numerous times. We know of the Sermon on the Mount, that's the most popular. And then we have this one in Luke that's the Sermon on the Plain. I think that they are two, but whether it's one or two, I bet the same message was given by Jesus numerous times. So that's all extra. It doesn't really matter for what we're talking through today, but I do believe it's two different sermons. So Jesus tells us in Matthew 5:5, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." So when we read things like that, some alarms should start going off, because culturally we have a definition or this viewpoint on a particular word. And when Jesus tells us to do something and we kind of cringe when we hear it culturally, that's where the alarm should go off and we should dig in. And when you dig in, you see that, yeah, Jesus is not telling us to be weak men. Jesus himself was not weak, and he doesn't call us to be weak as men either. What does meekness actually mean? First, let's start with, what is it not? Meekness is not weakness. It is not being passive. It is not being fearful. Meek men do not avoid conflict. They are not a people pleaser. They don't lack conviction. They don't let people walk all over them. So meekness is not a lack of strength. And there's a couple things I mentioned there that kind of play in with weakness, but let me say, do not be a weak man. Okay? There's two types of men that really I can't stand, to be quite honest. One is weak men that are pushovers. They will let people walk right over them. The other are posers. Posers is my terminology for men that pretend to be men. And I would make an argument that they are the people that are the people pleasers, right? They want to be that person in every situation. And a lot of times they come across a little bit of macho as well. And they're just that person that probably pops into your mind when I say, hey, there's men pretending to be men that really have no business representing what manhood is. They're probably those people. And you probably have some in your lives. But man, what an embarrassment those types of men are. Either those that are posers or those men that are just weak and pushovers. That's not how we should be. So don't do that. Don't be that type of man. So that's what meekness is not. Now let's talk a little bit about what meekness is. I love the definition of meekness. Meekness is strength or power under control. Strength under control. Now, we're all quick learners, so we know that it doesn't mean weakness, but think through that definition of strength under control and think through what your definition of meekness was at the beginning of this episode. I bet you they're significantly different. And I hope that you can see with that contrast between the two definitions, with the latter being strength under control, I hope you can see that that is something worth embracing. What does meekness ultimately mean? Well, first of all, it's rooted in our relationship with the Lord. Our confidence comes from the Lord, not ourselves. Because of that, we can be humble. We can live with humility because our identity is secure. We can be powerful, yet restrained when we need to be. And that comes through wisdom. It comes from wisdom. It comes from experience. Meekness would also be reflected in how you choose obedience over ego. You choose others over self. You don't have to demonstrate your strength if you're a meek man. Your strength comes from your confidence that you have in the Lord. It's an internal strength that you know is present. And because you know it's present, you don't need to demonstrate it. Your strengths could be physical, it could be intellectual, it could be power or influence. Maybe you're a good leader, but those are all great strengths, but you don't have to demonstrate those in a boastful way. You have this quiet confidence about yourself. You are restrained. I saw I think it was a TikTok video that there were two, they were at a stadium of some sort, and there was this one man in the face of another, and they were just kind of jawing back and forth. And this one guy starts to smile and he walks away. And then the video, which by the way, I don't know if this is true, but I thought, hey, this is kind of an interesting example. As he's walking away in the video, then they start to overlay videos of this gentleman in the boxing ring and made it appear like he is a champion boxer. And fortunate for the other guy that he didn't act upon that. But I thought that's a good example for strength that was under control. I'm not saying that our strength is physical only, right? But if that video were true, that would be a good example of somebody that had the power and ability to act upon that situation, and he chose not to. He refrained from doing so. That's a good example. I'm also reminded of my mentor from work. I mentioned him in an earlier episode. He was always this guy that was the smartest person in the room. He was always cool, calm, collected in every situation, and I really admired him for that. But I would not have defined him as meek until I matured some as well, and I learned more about what meekness really is. He was very influential. As I said, he was one of the smartest people in the room. He was also very wealthy. He didn't really need to be in the conversations he was. He could have retired, and in fact, he did. He came out of retirement because he loved the sort of that entrepreneur mindset, and he was really passionate about that. But he demonstrated meekness in the sense that he could have dominated every conversation we were in, but he recognized that even though he was smarter than most, he was more influential than most, he could still learn from others, and he was self-controlled, did not think too highly of himself. He always learned from others. He used every situation as a way to better those around him and get to the actual reason why we were there. So our why, he kept bringing that about. And looking back now, I recognize, yeah, this individual was meek. Nobody would ever accuse him of being weak, but nobody would really ever accuse him of being this out of touch, hard charger either, because he wasn't. He was very controlled, deliberate in how he acted, and he did it for the betterment of others and our common goal. If we look back to the Bible, there's a couple of people that I think stand out from a meekness standpoint. One is Joseph, not Jesus' dad, but Old Testament Joseph, who was sold off by his brothers, right? He goes to Egypt, kind of takes that number 2 in command just because he's obedient to the Lord, and the Lord blesses him despite many trials. And at the end of his story that we see in Genesis, he has an opportunity to get back at his brothers. And instead of doing that, he chooses forgiveness and love, takes them in and takes care of them. And that's a great example. He had the ability to really punish his brothers up to death, right? He really could have done something very negative, but he chose love. He chose forgiveness. He had strength under control to love and forgive them. And I think that's a great example for us. Obviously, the example of meekness for us is Jesus. Fair to say, there is no man who ever held so much power and ability to demonstrate his strength. Yet, he chose to control his strength for the betterment of humanity. The same people he came to save are those that were mocking him. And I don't know about you, but I bet you're like me. And when somebody mocks you, you get angry. And at those moments, you wish you had all the power in the world to get back at those people. Well, Jesus had all the power in the world, yet he chose love. He chose to be controlled while still wielding all the power and strength, more than any man could ever have. And that's such a wonderful example of meekness. He was strong. He was under control. What I want you to think through this week, guys, as we take this topic of meekness, just some rhetorical questions. How do you respond when you are disrespected? When someone criticizes you? If somebody disagrees with you? When somebody frustrates you? Maybe when somebody gets credit that you think you deserved? How do you guys feel about those situations? Anybody can lose their cool. Anybody can dominate if they're in a position of authority or influence. Anybody can demand respect. But it takes a strong man to be controlled. When you have the strength, you have the ability to sort of introduce your will on the situation, for a lack of a better way to say that, and you choose not to, that's self-control, and that's meekness, and that's what we need to embrace as men. Encourage us to think through a few things. As we inevitably hit difficult conversations throughout the week, they're going to come. No need in shying away from those, right? We'll embrace those, and hopefully our newfound appreciation of meekness can help us through. But I want us all to focus on this. I want us to listen before we speak. Listen to the other person's argument. We don't have to be right. We might be right. Okay, that's the thing. We might be right. We don't have to over-iterate why we are right. We don't have to make this grand gesture of why we are right. Okay? So listen before you speak. I want us to choose patience over anger. Let's lead with humility. Let's serve without recognition. Serving others because it's the right thing to do, not because we get recognized. And that one's tough, right? Serving because it's the right thing to do, not because we get any sort of recognition. And lastly, guys, I would encourage you to forgive somebody. Like Joseph did, like Jesus did. This is maybe the hardest one. For the first time in my adult life in the last year, I had to forgive somebody that I respected a lot. And I knew this person didn't mean to make me feel the way that I did. But I had always heard, be forgiving like Jesus. And I had always said, be forgiving like Jesus. But the first time I had to forgive, it was really a struggle for me. And I don't think I'll ever forget how I felt about this situation. It caused me a tremendous amount of stress. But I know that I am supposed to forgive. And it was a long time. And I still get very frustrated when I think of the situation. So I won't forget the situation and how that made me feel, but I can forgive. And I have forgiven this individual. We have to get over our differences. Life is too short to hold any sort of grudge. We have to be able to forgive. I don't think we have to forget. I don't think we can, because we have to use those moments to help shape us for the future. But we can forgive. We can understand the heart behind any potential conflict, and we can forgive one another. So I encourage you, as you go about your day and the week ahead, guys, look for ways to listen to others. They don't need to hear you necessarily, but be an ear for somebody else. Choose patience over anger. Live with humility. Serve somebody, not seeking any recognition, and seek opportunities to forgive somebody. You may have a situation that requires forgiveness, and maybe this would be unfortunate, but maybe that's sort of driven this wedge in between you and this other person. and it could have been going on for a long time. Take the meekness approach, which is strength under control. Be the stronger person to initiate those conversations. They're going to be awkward, but initiate those conversations and forgive that other person. I think it'll have huge dividends on your relationship with those people, and is really a great way for you to embrace this wonderful trait of meekness. Guys, we need less men thumping their chest. We don't need to see more examples of men who just tell us how good that they are. We need good, strong, meek men to make a difference. I hope this has been encouraging for you guys, and that you have a clear definition of meekness versus weakness, and that as you read and you hear that we are called to be meek, that you embrace this for the wonderful trait that it is. It has a huge impact for us, and it's going to have a huge impact for others. Thanks so much for checking out this episode, guys. Check back for more in the very near future. Until then, let's get it.